You are watching Fight Feed. Today I'm going to be talking about the UFC betting scandal and why I think Conor McGregor is officially done in the UFC. If you guys remember, the UFC had a major betting scandal that happened back in 2022 and 2023. Coach James Krauss, former UFC fighter, then turned coach, still kind of fighting in between, but mainly being a coach at this point, had a Discord where he was basically providing bet picks to an entire community of people. Because at this time, UFC fighters and family members of UFC fighters, friends of UFC fighters, were all able to bet on fights, placing wagers online or in sports books. Now, James Krauss kind of snitched on himself, went on Ariel Helwani's show, and kind of gave the lay of the land of what he was doing and how he was earning a ton of money outside of being a coach and MMA fighter, but betting on MMA fights. Now, the biggest thing that caused this scandal to go haywire was there was Derek Minner, who's a UFC fighter, who had an injury going into a fight on one of those random Apex cards on a Saturday. And James Krauss, obviously the coach of Derek Minner, knowingly, I believe, made bets on behalf of the other fighter, and I think him and another UFC fighter named Jeff Molina were kind of involved in this. It's caused a whole scandal, right? Where I'm headed with this, both those guys were not only, James Krauss wasn't, I don't think, actively fighting at the time. Jeff Molina was released from the UFC along with Derek Minner. They've been being investigated by the FBI, I believe. It's a federal investigation.
It is what it is. There's an investigation going on,
And notably at this time, the UFC also took action against James Krauss by basically saying any fighter who remained fighting out of his gym or working with him as a coach would be released or penalized by the UFC. Most notably at this time, Brandon Moreno was actually training with James Krauss. James Krauss, I believe, was his coach going into the Kai Kara France fight and helped him get the W there. And so Brandon Moreno actually had to relocate, find a new gym. I believe he now trains with Saif Saud. Regardless, where I'm headed with this video is that after all this occurred, the UFC created a new policy on betting that no UFC fighter, and this is active UFC fighter on their roster, is allowed to make bets on fights. They are not allowed to go through a third party to make bets on fights. They are not allowed to have any of their friends or family bet on fights. So the reason I'm making this video is because I think it's absolutely hypocritical that Conor McGregor has publicly bet hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not, and on one bet he bet $1 million on MMA, not just MMA in general, but UFC fights. And these are not like just run-of-the-mill like prelim card fights. These are like high-level main event or co-main event fights. And the UFC has done fucking nothing about it. This should piss every single person off that's a fan of the sport, regardless of how you feel about Conor McGregor. My disclaimer, I respect everything that Conor has done for this sport, 1,000%. Without Conor and his ability to kind of bring more eyes to this sport and build it, the UFC would not be where it's at today. And I will admit, I was a casual fan back then. Like, I would tune in to highlights and things of that nature when Conor was on his rise. I was not a constant watcher, but I did respect everything that was happening there. Now, with that said, since I've religiously watched UFC back in 2019 to now, Conor has been really, like, to me, like, when I see people posting about Conor and, like, every time the guy fucking does anything, you got MMA channels fucking posting all over the place. It is so damn annoying because it's like, bro, you're not even doing anything. You're not even doing anything in this sport right now. So, like, what's the fucking point of us getting on here and, commenting on the things you're doing when the last time you fought was 2021? That's besides the point. We should all be absolutely pissed off that the UFC is okay basically releasing fighters like Jeff Molina, who, obviously he wasn't, he could have been a high-level talent, obviously, in the flyweight division. I believe he was on a 3-fight win streak when he was released, but He wagered less than $1,000 and the UFC made this huge fucking deal about it and released him. But they allow Conor to just run around and do whatever the fuck he wants. It's like, I'm a middle child, so I actually take a little bit of shit with this because it's like being the middle child, I don't believe in favorites. I don't believe in someone getting preferential treatment just because you brought eyes to the sport. Like, how long are we going to use that as a crutch and allow Conor to just do whatever the fuck he wants? Like, it really upsets me that, like, we're still allowing him to basically flirt with the idea of coming back to the UFC while he's breaking one of their policies that literally says you could be released or fined, and basically the UFC, it's at their discretion to discipline you, but you will be disciplined. There's not like a thing that says, oh, if you're Conor McGregor, you just get let off the hook. He's literally betting this past weekend at UFC 314, he bet $500,000 on Michael Chandler to win by KO. He bet for the Alex Pereira Roundtree fight $1 million for the fight to end by KO. He won $1.2 million, so he won $200,000 on top of his initial bet. This guy is already rich as fuck. He's out here betting more money than most people will ever see in their lifetime, and the UFC doesn't fucking bat an eye. And it's actually shocking to me that as fans and like looking at the MMA media, no one is commenting on this. No one is calling out the fact that Conor, once again, the golden boy, is allowed to do whatever the fuck he wants, and the UFC does fucking nothing about it. I feel like as fans, and you know what? There's probably going to be a bunch of dick riders, in the comments, probably feeling a certain way, and that's okay. Like I said, I have no disrespect to Conor as a fighter. I have no disrespect to what he's done. I love Conor McGregor. If I saw Conor, I'd want to shake his hand and meet him, right? Like I'm actually a fan of Conor McGregor, but I'm also, like I've said in my other videos, I'm an objective fan of the UFC and MMA. So from a perspective of like recency, Conor hasn't done shit in this sport. He hasn't done anything but pulled out of a fight and strung Michael Chandler along for way longer than he should have. Like, he's done nothing. And regardless of what you want to argue about that he did a decade ago, like, it's like me bragging about shit I did 10 years ago. Like, who the fuck's going to listen to that? No one gives a shit. But you guys can sit there and die on that hill if you want to. My feeling, and this is all backed by, if you go, like, I did Google searches of this policy. It says it point blank. You got Dana White saying that these guys who, were betting less than, way less than Conor are going to federal prison over this.
Somebody's saying, well, what's the UFC going to do? We let these guys know not to bet on fights. Do you know what the outcome of this is? Like, if I penalize them, you get cut. They're going to go to fucking federal prison. Federal fucking prison.
Meanwhile, Conor's out here openly snitching on himself, breaking this huge code of conduct rule that the UFC has put into place. Like, I don't understand how Conor's allowed to continue to do this when the UFC has this policy. But my theory, although Conor is showing as active on the UFC's website, my theory is that he has told them something behind the scenes to the effect of, I'm not fighting anymore. I know he had that interview recently where he mentioned, that he thinks he's done it all, whatever. That's fine. The UFC still shows him as active on their website. So as a fan, I'm looking at this like he's an active fighter. He's betting on fights. You guys are doing fucking nothing about it. I just feel like I don't like the hypocrisy. And as a former gambler, I don't gamble anymore, but as a former gambler, I feel like if you're going to only give the action to one person, you got to open it up to everybody else. You can't have a problem with, the Jeff Molinas and Derek Minners who are like literally probably not even making enough money as fighters to live their lives. And you're going to throw them out of the UFC because they made bets. But the guy who has enough money for fucking half the UFC roster is out here betting millions, and you don't give a fuck. That should piss everybody off. I hope that there is something that could be done there. I hope the UFC can maybe if they're not going to discipline Conor and make him beat to the same drum the other fighters have to, then what I think they should do is just open up the floor for betting again. Allow these fighters to bet. Because if you're going to allow one person to do it, you're setting a precedent that should allow everyone else. So, like I said, this is something that really irks me because it's like you got some person who is still getting preferential treatment over every single person in the UFC for things he did a decade ago. And look, sure, if you even want to go back to 2018 when he had the highest pay-per-view, fine. Still, 2018, we are closer to 2018 being 10 years away than we are it not being 10 years away. 7 years ago, like we're still giving credit for this shit. And meanwhile, you got fighters like scraping by and like maybe trying to get a little action here and there. I get that there might be some foul play, right, with the Derek Minner shit. So fine, you release Derek Minner, you release Jeff Molina, that's fine. But now you've stopped this. You've stopped other fighters who have actually had success with this, which there are fighters out there who've had success betting on the UFC. And you've stopped them from being able to do it because they're not going to do something that could, obviously potentially take away their income as a fighter. But meanwhile, you are literally letting Conor McGregor openly do this and not do anything about it. Like, I bet you the conversation with Conor was like a text, hey, see you're posting your fucking bet slips. Don't be doing that shit, in public because we can't have people knowing about it. It's bullshit, and it pisses me off. Comment below what you guys think about this situation. How do you think that the UFC should handle this? Do you think that Conor has already told them behind the scenes that he's done, and so maybe it's not being blown into a big deal because they secretly know Conor's never coming back? But in my opinion, outside of like the addiction struggles that people believe Conor has, outside of, all of that, I feel like there's another situation happening where Conor's basically openly said, look, guys, I'm done. They know it. They're just not ready to admit it yet because, they want people like those fickle ass fucking casual fans of UFC just be hanging on by a fucking thread like a little dingleberry whenever Conor posts a fucking anything. Like, oh, I'm going to fucking go hit pads. It means, Conor's coming back. He's going to knock everybody out. Like, the dude doesn't fucking want to fight in almost a decade. So calm the fuck down. Let me know what you guys think about this situation. Smash the like button if you feel like you need to. And also, I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be posting all of my MMA takes and even more MMA content on a regular basis. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.